Hello, everybody. It's the old bear from the Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot. Tonight we have a guest with us for this live. He is a Bigfoot. He calls himself a Bigfoot enthusiast. He's a very good gentleman. He's into Bigfoot. He looks into Bigfoot, and I hope y'all enjoy tonight's show. And why don't we go ahead and bring him on now? Here we go. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Good, old bear. How we doing?
We're doing good.
Good.
Thank you for coming.
My honor. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, it's been a while since I've done a live. I'm a little rusty, so please bear with me, my friend. It's I'm just trying to do my best and get the word out about these big hairy creatures, and the way to do that is to have people like you on. You're the new group of Bigfoot enthusiasts that have come out, and you look into these creatures. And to get started off, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Me personally, ouch, cat just decided to join us. Say hi. Right now, I'm a retired personal trainer. I got hurt while working in a gym, so I just do it part-time now. I'm also a caregiver for my girlfriend for the last 10 years. She's MS but we make it work. And in the free time I do get in the last 4 years, I kind of started getting into the whole Bigfoot thing. So, because I'd heard about them all my life growing up. I mean, even before I can remember. So that was how I.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was how I even got interested in it. Was
okay.
My grandma had property in Benzie County in Lake Ann, and back in the 70s. And before I can even remember, just as much as I can remember everything else, I remember, the part of the woods you didn't go in, and also how I found out, they would talk about Bigfoot being in the woods. And I remember when Leonard Nimoy had the show In Search Of, I think I was 5 or 6 when that aired, and I pointed at the TV and I said, "Dad, is that what's out at Grandma's?" When they aired that movie, and he's like, "Not that one, but yep, that's what's out at Grandma's." So that was.
Mean he admitted to it?
Yeah. So it was just kind of a thing that, it was joked about in a way, don't go out there by yourself because, but at the same time, it was admitted they were there.
Now, what state are you in?
I'm in Michigan.
You're in Michigan.
Lower Peninsula.
It's a good Bigfoot territory.
Yeah, especially where, I'll even go as far as Benzie County. I've had a couple people send me articles where, and Val.
Yes.
Yeah, Val actually sent me a picture that compared one that was found, a Bigfoot track found downstate compared to the Benzie County ones, and said they must grow them big in Benzie County because The one was 16 and the Benzie County one was 18. So
Mm. That's a big
Benzie
Bigfoot.
County was known for having bigger Bigfoot.
Now, besides what you heard when you were a child, and I know that piqued your interest into it, did you have an encounter or did you find something that really got you to become a Bigfoot enthusiast, as you call yourself? I call you a researcher, but
Uh, well, thank you, but Bigfoot's well, I can't say a interest anymore because he's more like a hobby because interests are free and hobbies cost money. So now he's costing money.
yeah.
But yeah, I had a sighting in '87, just a couple miles up from where my grandma used to live at that time. And as I was coming around a corner, there was a guardrail.
Mm-hmm.
Me, it looked like somebody had thrown a big bag of garbage or something out, just this big black mass
Mm-hmm.
next to the guardrail. And I went for late night drives all the time. So this is 11, 12 o'clock at night. And as I pull up, I can see it's got hair and it kind of moves a little bit. So first thing in my mind's a bear. I thought,
Right.
oh man, this is a big bear. I'm going to get to see me a really big bear. So I slow down, get within 20 feet of it and stop. And then this big bear stands up and then he squares off to my car. And its shoulders, I had a 79 El Camino at the time. His shoulders lined up with the outside of my fenders. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying he just because of how big it was, because his head was just out of the headlights, but there was enough where you could see the eye shine.
Yeah.
And it was black with some reddish brown highlights. And I'm just, and because I'm only, at the time I was 6 foot and 165 pounds. Here's this massive that I'd heard about. So I wasn't really, my reality didn't shift. It was just the fact of seeing one.
Mm-hmm.
But as it's standing there, I'm thinking, okay, I've had enough. I go to hit the horn, and then something tells me as I'm going to push that button for the horn that if I hit this horn, it's going to tick him off, and I'm going to have a really bad night. So I am sitting there looking, and I can feel just like he's looking right at me through the head windshield. This goes on for maybe 10 seconds or so, and then he just turns to the left and literally just stepped over the guardrail and was gone.
Hmm. Well, that is a pretty unusual type of sighting because most people just see them crossing the road or they see them walking through the woods, and one to stand there and square off to you, it's definitely different.
Yeah, but it was in 1987 too, so I didn't tell anybody about it for 30 years almost
Yeah.
because of the ridicule. We lived in a haunted house, and I got enough grief over that. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't want to
Yeah.
add Bigfoot to the list.
Well, that's the same as me when I was in 1984 and I saw mine, and you know, my dad forbade me to say anything to my mother or grandmother about it, and just to keep it quiet. And look where it got me. Uh, I no longer had a. I wasn't like you. It went from being something you do on your free time, and then it's fun, and to where it became expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not cheap, and I don't have, I have to save some pennies to get those recorders and just got a new thermal, so anxious to go out and play with it.
Now, you mentioned you got a new thermal. You had the chance to use it yet?
Just a little bit. I got it after that last encounter I told you about and sent you pictures of. So,
Hmm.
um, Elaine's been pretty sick, so for me to take off for a couple hours at night just isn't in the
That's understandable.
so
Yeah, that's an understandable situation where you can't take off. I mean, you got to take care of your better. Is she your
yeah,
better half, or is she the
yep.
best half?
She's the best half. There's no
Okay.
doubt about that. Uh, she's the brains. I'm I'm the brawn. That's about it.
Yeah,
You know, I'm the man of the house, but she's the woman in charge.
yeah, I know how that works. She ain't 5 foot tall on a piece of dynamite, is she?
Uh, I'll tell you, she's 5'10",
Uh huh.
and if she were able to walk, I would fear. You know,
Okay, I
she
understand.
was
I understand where you're at, and
she was she was a cheerleader in high school before her MS, and she was the base for the pyramid that they did. So very athletic, and even
yeah.
though the MS is taking its toll, you could tell she can use that one good arm and give me a wallop if I get too close.
Oh, yeah. I know how that works. I got a 5 foot tall piece of dynamite, so yeah, I know how you feel.
Big things in little packages.
Yes, yes. So tell me some of the things that you did when you first got past the point of being just interested and started looking. Tell me what you started out doing when you started looking.
There was a big gap there because from 87 until it would have been 2019 till 2019, it was just anything I could find or read or watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2019, I started getting into the Bigfoot Facebook groups and telling my story a little bit. And then I made a friend on there, and he's like, "I'll tell you what, if you're serious about wanting to have an experience, go to this place. This will be your best chance." And I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot. Why not?" Knowing that people are out there, some of them for years without ever seeing anything. I thought, why not? I'll go. I love walking in the woods anyway, regardless. That's always one of my favorite things to do to clear my head.
Uh-huh.
I had mentioned to a friend that I was going to go, and she's like, "You're going to go look for imaginary monkeys?" I'm like, "Yep." I mean, she's total non-believer that, thought I was crazy, but same thing. We always enjoyed taking a walk at the time.
Right.
So we go out to this place, and as we're walking down, I'm kind of shy, so I don't like to do yells or anything like that. I thought, well, I'll try clapping.
Mm-hmm.
So I would clap twice every so often, and nothing would happen. And we get down about a mile down this trail, and I'm looking in the woods, and
Brian, you froze up, my friend.
I took 2 steps. I took a picture of the hill, took 2 steps up, and after taking 2 steps, I heard it sounded like two catcher's mitts hit together twice.
Uh-huh.
And it was way louder than I could ever replicate.
Right.
And the fact that to me, it sounded like clapping. And the fact that it clapped twice the way I did, I stopped dead in my tracks. And I looked at my friend. She's only like 5 foot, 4'10", I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got tears in her eyes right now. And I go, it takes hands to clap, right? And she's like, yeah, I want to go home. I said, hey, no problem. I'm right behind you. So then as we start walking out, all of a sudden we get a tree knock. Walk a little farther, you get a whoop. Walk a little farther, more tree knocks, more whoops. And I'm thinking, holy crap. And, I got way more than I bargained for. And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to get out of here at this point.
Yeah.
And so about halfway up, all of a sudden you can hear, I had parked next to a metal gate, one they
Right.
had a big cattle gate going across. And all of a sudden you start hearing that rattle. And I'm like, holy crap, they're all around us.
Mm-hmm.
And we got about 3/4 of the way to my truck. And I turned around just in time to see a big black shape jump behind a tree. And I didn't say anything to her. She's already freaked out enough. I just
Right.
put my keys in her hand, And I said, just go, let's move along a little faster. And then we got to the truck and, everything was fine and left. And it probably took me about 6 months before I went back. Because that shook me up pretty good.
That's
Because
understandable. Being
so
surrounded by them is a situation that a lot of people have never been in.
yeah, it was, and it was crazy how fast it was and how silent. That was what amazed me. Something that big can move that quick without hearing anything. And then it was about 6 months later we started going out, and then we started. She would go me every other time, if
Mhm.
that. And we started experimenting with things, like leaving little rocks here and seeing what would happen, and um, got into the whole would leave rocks, and paint them, and then sometimes they would show up, a mile away in some place we had put a different type of gift, like another rock. And then we started finding tracks as well. We were finding 17, 18-inch, nothing good enough to cast because the ground's so hard out there and there's so much dead fall leaves.
Right.
So we were finding these prints. We were getting glimpses here and there, but nothing where you could say, yes, that's what that was. I would take pictures of the wood line, and to me, I would see maybe something. I'd send it to other people, and they're like, yeah, there's something
Mhm.
there. But it was the whole you need a red circle thing. But, they would got to the point where I want to say almost like if they were in a good mood and wanted to interact, if I clap, I'd get an answer,
Right.
and if not, then nothing was going to happen that day. But then we got into the whole feeding.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah.
So
And there were a
tell
lot
me,
of interesting results.
well, tell me all about your good results, and then we'll get into the bad results, if there is any.
Oh, about you froze up. Sorry.
If you have, tell me about the good results first, and then
The
we'll
good,
go to the bad ones.
yeah, the good results were I would find the peanut butter jars. I mean, obviously the squirrels and coons and possums would get their share,
Mhm.
but one of the most interesting ones I found was, I mean, the peanut butter jars would get lit clean, and the lids wouldn't be damaged. I mean, I got a jar sitting right here.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not a rodent or deer or anything like that to do that
no, and like this one, I mean, the lid is pristine, and this is exactly how I found it.
with the
You know,
lid back on it.
yeah. I've got
That's
one that I've got in a bag because it's got, I think, 2 fingerprints on it, but at the
hmm
same time, they had taken the tinfoil completely off the lid, and I hate to say this, but rolled it up like a doobie, we'll go with,
hmm
and put it in the jar, and then screwed the lid back on and stuck it 8 foot up, at least 8 foot back in the
Well, I don't think that's a squirrel or a possum or a raccoon or a deer
No,
or bear.
no, I don't think a bear did that. You know,
No,
th
that would definitely take hands.
I apologize, I don't know why this is cutting out on me.
Don't worry about it. We'll just go right on through it.
Okay, um, but I was going through for 2.5 years, I was putting out 9 jars of peanut butter a week, all the 4 pound, because the coons would run off with the 2 pounders. The 4 pounders made it a little more difficult for them. And
Wait a minute, Brian. 9 4-pound jars a week.
yeah, I'm still paying on that credit card bill, I think, for 2.5 years.
What were you feeding? I mean, other than the other normal animals that would probably get into it after it got opened,
Well, my
were you
guess is
feeding the whole clan?
I think there is a family out there because I found 23-inch prints. I found 19-inch prints. I
Mhm.
found 17, and then like 6-inch prints, like little baby bear feet.
That's a clan.
So I'm thinking they're out there and they got kids. I got a glimpse of a little 3-footer twice in a bush.
Mm-hmm.
He was standing there checking me out, and then all of a sudden a knock, and off he goes. You could hear
Yeah.
him crash through the woods. And then the second time was 2 weeks later, and he actually got to hang around for about 30 seconds. You can see him in the background kind of doing this, checking things out, and then a knock, and off he goes into the woods.
Right. Now, tell
So
me some of the other benefits that you got from feeding.
when I would go out at night, I'm sure they would take it as soon as the same day.
Mm-hmm.
I would put it out during like on a Saturday, I would go out twice. I would go out once during the day, put stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
and then if everything lined up, I'd go back at night.
Mm-hmm.
Right around dusk. Not sometimes, mostly after 9, 10 o'clock would be my latest, and I'd be walking around, and I might walk by one of my peanut butter spots and be there. On my way back, come back, and then the jar's gone.
Huh.
So one of the funnier thing was I had just put a jar of peanut butter out, and had a new thermal, one of those little Seek thermals that you plug into your iPhone.
Yeah.
First time I'd used it, and of course I don't practice with it. I'm too dumb. I got to go out and try it first thing in the field, you know. And so I'm sitting there watching, and this trail where I know that they'll walk up because I found prints in the hard pack,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I had it on white for hot. So I'm watching and I'm watching, and I'm like, I could hear stuff, but there was no other animals, but you'd hear crunches and maybe a little knock here or something. And I thought, man, that's too big. Must be a gaps in the trees because that's two big black shadows way down there. Must be a
Right.
gap in the trees. And then behind me, I heard a huge crack because I'd been standing staring at this thermal for like 10 minutes, and I hear a huge crack. And as I turn, I go by my truck, and the thermal shows that the truck engine's black. So I actually had it on black for hot. And
Ooh.
once I figured that out and turned around, the the shadows were even closer. And it was like, oh, okay, I've got my fill. It's time to go at this point because I think they know like I'm aware because like if
Mm-hmm.
they had picked the pace up a little bit. So I definitely got in my truck and took off at that point. So I knew there was at least three. The two that I was looking at on the thermal and whatever made the
Uh-huh.
noise behind me.
Yeah, they tend to do. They don't typically go by themselves. There's
Yeah.
always another one or two with them.
And then the other crazy thermal one was when I was looking down the hill and watching a peanut butter spot, hoping I'd see one come up from what I call the alleyway
Mm-hmm.
and, grab that jar and go. But instead, it was kind of foggy, so I'm using a flashlight at the same time. And I see these two little yellow eyes, but they're real close to the ground. What the heck is that? And I can't see down the thermal yet, but I can see the eyes going back and forth, back and forth, back, and it's
Mm-hmm.
getting closer. And I'm like, finally shows up on the thermal, and it's a great big fat trash panda. So it's like, so I see the big fat raccoon,
Okay.
and he keeps getting closer. All of a sudden, he stops by this tree. I thought, oh boy, here's the point of attack. I'm going to show up on YouTube or something because I got bit by the raccoon. And it's sitting still, and all of a sudden, you see this red flash come out from behind the tree.
It froze up, Brian.
Did any of that come through?
The red flash, and that's where you stopped.
So the red flash, trash panda disappears. It snatched the raccoon up. You can
Mm-hmm.
hear the raccoon squealing for its life for just a few seconds, and then you hear a thud, and then no more squealing. and you could hear 2 footfalls, and I'm standing there with a flashlight 'cause I don't know what to think at this point. I'm kind of in shock, and I
Right.
see 2 big baseball-shaped eyes blink about 7 foot up, and then you hear a few more footfalls. I'm still standing there, and I could see them blink again, and then off they go.
Hmm. Well, at least you helped them with dinner.
So, yeah, that's what I was just glad it was the raccoon and not me.
Well, yeah, yeah. Now,
It was
um, we said, that's some of the benefits of you feeding them. You got a lot of activity from it. Give us some of the detriments to feeding.
Yeah, I might get a little misty-eyed on this one,
Well, take your
because it
time.
involved other people. If it had been just me, that'd be one thing, but, and I'd been warned, but being arrogant, I guess, in a sense that I thought I could control this, and as long as I stay on this side, then they'll play by my rules and blah, 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 blah. Well, I got really sick, and I missed a little over 3 weeks of going out there.
Mm.
And then about 2 weeks after I'm back, um, the DNR got a hold of me, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, conservation officers.
Uh-oh.
So they actually, my friend had been out there and they got her license plate. They had put trail cams up to get license plates, but mine was in my windows and it was tinted, so it was hard for them
Mhm.
to read. So they gave her a card, had me call them, and they actually sent a specialist up from like an hour and a half away, which was really weird because we got a local office that's 10 minutes from my house.
Right.
But they send, this person instead, and she's talking to me, and she said, you can't be doing this anymore. You're feeding the wildlife, it's littering, and the wildlife's getting too close to the houses. I'm like, okay. I says, well, I see bird feeders and people baiting deer and all that. And she goes, yeah, but they shouldn't be baiting deer, so we might look into that. But the problem is, the bears are coming out of hibernation,
Mhm.
and the bears are getting too close to the house. And I'm like, bears? And she's like, yeah, the bears. They're coming out of hibernation. The bears are the issue here. And I said, am I being recorded or anything? And she's like, no. I said, okay, well, I've been out there 2.5 years. I said, and I've never seen a bear track, bear scat, never seen a bear.
Mhm.
And bears don't leave 23-inch prints, throw rocks at my truck and clap at me.
Mhm.
And she goes, excuse me? I said, no, 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 that's what you're getting right there. And she's like, well, the bears are the problem. And then she talked for a few more minutes because it is a conservancy. It's not state land. So technically it's private property. So she's like, they don't want to kick you out, but if you keep feeding the bears, then, that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to get involved and cite you for the littering. And she said, and by the way, we got all these jars, because the first year and a half, I found like most of them. And then the second year, I
Mhm.
didn't find all of them, but they had a few of them. And I'm like, well, she goes, do you want them back? And I'm like, well, what kind of shape are they in? And she says, well, a lot of them are just chewed up and stuff, but there are a few of them that are in good shape. She
Mhm.
said, "But I do have a question for you, because when I would put the peanut butter out, I would date the lid, and then I would date the bottom and initial where I put it, like P for pipe, H for hill."
Right.
She goes, "Why would you put the date on the lid and then a different date on the jar?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Well, that's what we were finding where, some of the jars that had the lid on it, there'd be different dates on the top and bottom." I just kind of chuckled and said, well, it must be the bears, I guess. I said, and then she goes, okay, well, we want to see your trail cams. Well, I wasn't lying. I said, I don't put any trail cams out. And she goes, well, do you have
Mhm.
anything on your phone? I said, nothing you're going to see without a warrant. And so that conversation ended. And then so when I was out looking for jars, I was friends with one of the neighbors out there.
Right.
And they came out and they said, "Man, we're really sorry." I'm like, "For what?" She goes, "Well, we had a group meeting because there's three pieces of property on the opposite side where I go that are
Mm-hmm.
private property. And one people and I get along, another group and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was, according to the people I talked to, this is where the bad part comes in, was it was 2 weeks after I missed out there,
Mm-hmm.
their motion lights started coming on. And they couldn't figure out what was going on, why the motion lights were being triggered. So they started watching the footage, and it was empty peanut butter jars bouncing in the yard. So for about a week, these peanut butter jars come bouncing in the yard, setting off their motion lights. Well, then the week after that, and this is where I still carry a lot of guilt about this one because,
Okay.
you know, as you've talked about, apparently one of the big ones started peeking in the windows of the house further down the road
Ooh.
and was peeking in on the guy's 5 year. I think she was 5 at the time. Second story window peeking in. And
Ooh.
so
That's
that
not
was when
good.
they got together and said, we need to put a stop to this, So they called the DNR but yeah, so I caused a whole lot of trauma because I wanted to feed and get activity. But then just like people had warned me that if they don't get it, they're going to find a way to get it.
Yeah.
So, that little girl probably still has nightmares, I imagine, of the Bigfoot looking in her window at her.
Yeah, that's kind of tough for you to have to deal with. I understand that. That's something you didn't intend to happen.
No, absolutely not. Like I said, I always figured it would just be if I quit feeding them, maybe they'd beat the crap out of me in the woods or something. I never dreamed they would do something to somebody else or create problems.
Well, that's the problem that I've found a lot is people will either knowingly or unknowingly feed one, and my cats on my bed drive me crazy. Lay down. I love that cat, but man, she
Oh
can
yeah,
she gets into stuff. But no, that's the problem a lot of people don't understand is even if you feed them and then all of a sudden you stop, they associate people with a food supply and stuff like that happens. Little kids get scared and even grown-ups get scared when that happens. So
yeah. Because I'm guessing the one that was peeking in her window was the one that left those 23-inch tracks that I
yeah,
showed you pictures of.
yeah, that's a pretty
Yes.
big nail, I would say, doing that.
Yeah, I think I must have walked right by him one night because this was the scariest night out there by far. Was
Okay.
I sent you pictures where there were the 2 tracks in the snow
Mm-hmm.
and the deer tracks next to them. I had a friend with me, and she was going through a rough time, and I says, "Well, I need to get out of the house anyway. Let's go. I want to go check out the Bigfoot spot." And she's like, "Okay, cool. I've been wanting to go with you." So she had stage 4 lung cancer at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and we go out there and we see those tracks. So I take that picture, and then
Brian. Uh-oh.
crunching and breaking and stuff like that. And she goes, "What's that?" Oh, sorry. So we hear the crunching and breaking, then we hear one big tree break in front of
Uh-huh.
us. Are we good?
We're good for now.
Okay. So I said, okay, I'm going to hit the light. And
Uh-huh.
when I hit the light, uh, 15, 20 feet away was the one I think I call Big Red that I've seen a couple times out there, glimpses.
Uh-huh.
But he was right in front of us. As soon as I hit that light, he brings that left arm up, puts it across his face like that. I turn around, tell her, go, you know.
Yeah.
And so as we turn around, he lets out just one angry is all I can say roar. There was no going into a high pitch. It was just an angry, low bellow roar.
Right.
That just it felt like it went right through you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
vibrated. It felt like it vibrated my coat, my pants, my shoes. So I'm pushing her, and I give her my truck keys. I'm like, if I'm not in that truck 30 seconds behind you, you go. And she's like, "Well, what about you?" And I says, "It won't matter. Just go." You know.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing her through the snow. We get to the truck, and you can hear it's walking behind us.
Yeah.
Um, get her in the truck, and because it was so icy, as soon as my foot hit from pushing her, I slip and fall under my truck.
Ooh.
So now I'm trying to scoot. Luckily, I had a 1 ton, so I had enough clearance. That wasn't a big deal. But I get about 3/4 of the way out, and my truck starts. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna get hit
Uh-oh.
by.
You froze. Okay. You're good now.
Oh, yeah.
You slid
So
under the truck.
I thought I was gonna get squished by my truck.
Ooh.
Get up, push her over, and we back down. You know, to someplace I wouldn't normally back down. And as we drive about a mile into it, she looked at me and I looked at her and I said, "I'm ready for a drink." And she's like, "Yeah, me too, but we got to stop at Shell first." And I'm like, I'm not stopping anywhere. I want a drink. And she's like, "No," because when he had roared, she said, she peed her pants.
Ooh.
Luckily, she had snow pants on. So we just stopped at Shell and she put them in a bag and in the back of the truck. And then we stopped, had one drink, and then I took her home. But I think what happened was, again, I think it was kind of my fault because not thinking about the deer tracks next to it, maybe I'm thinking he ran down a deer and, if I'm sitting there having dinner with my family,
Yeah.
some guy comes in with a spotlight, I'm going to be pretty irritated too.
Right. That's understandable.
So, and then Val had sent the picture I had taken off and Bob Daigle lightened it up.
Mm-hmm.
And by looking at the picture, the shadow, he's the one that pointed him out. He said, "You got two on the left and one on the right." And he gave a rough estimate of 10 to 12 foot for the one on the left. So I must have walked right in between them.
Well, they can stand there and let you walk past, not move. And our eyesight is movement oriented. So,
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know how else to describe. That was, and then she wouldn't get out. I went back the next day, and I took her with me, and she wouldn't get out of the truck. So that film I sent me trying to recreate those two steps is filmed
mm-hmm.
from my truck. But I mean, it took me 8 or 9 steps, and I'm 6 foot, 32-inch inseam,
Right.
and you can see me kicking snow and everything else, and yet those are two clean prints. And one of them that was behind the power box is the one I sent you. That was 23 at the base.
Okay, Brian, you froze up again, man.
So, oh yeah, so
There
that
you
was
go.
23 at the base, and uh, then even after I quit feeding them, they would still, I would just start doing different things. Like we had talked on the podcast with Kath about the gemstones and the white quartz.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who does a bunch of stone gathering, and I tried a little experiment, and still working on with it. I put white quartz, a blue stone, and a red something, and I would put them where I would put the peanut butter. And so there were 4 different places I put the stones, and out of 3 out of the 4, the blue one disappeared. So I would put another blue one back,
Mm-hmm.
and this time only 2 disappeared. The other were left, but so I put 2 more back, but I haven't been back since.
Right.
So that was when we went to the another spot where I had heard stories about way back when my mom owned a bar down on the Manistee River, and there was a guy in there, and he got all liquored up and was talking about the fact that one night he had, pigs and chickens and stuff like that. And he and his wife couldn't stand each other sober. They had to be drunk. And one night, he is sitting there, and all of a sudden he hears a big commotion outside, and he goes and looks, and he sees a great big Bigfoot with a pig under each. But the Bigfoot had a pig under each arm, and he is taking off with the pigs. And the guy grabs his gun, but he had been bird hunting, so all he had was bird shot.
Yeah.
And he's shooting at the Bigfoot, hollering, "Bring those pig back. You can have the wife instead." He's telling us this in the bar. So I'd heard stories, but then I went back with a friend who wanted to go. And first thing he did when we got out of the car was do a howl. And
Mm.
that's never worked for me. The only time I did it in my regular spot, I did the Ohio howl 3 times on a call blaster,
Mm-hmm.
and a 3-foot chunk of wood come flying through the trees, went through the 15 yards across the parking lot and hit my back of my truck. And I swore it blew my back window out. So I jumped and looked, and it was luckily it hit the bed liner of my truck. But
Mm.
so I never did a call blast after that out there. And he starts off with one. I'm like, oh man, I kind of hope they're not here now because this isn't going to go well. And so we start walking, and we got a response right away. I got to upload the recorder because this time I was actually smart and just put a microphone on my hat and recorded the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And got a response right off the bat. And so we start walking, and he would do a knock, and we'd get a knock here and there. And the X's out there were just the biggest ones I had seen at this point. I mean, and then I think I sent you a picture where the trees were shaped like a triangle down in this little ravine next to the
Yeah.
river.
Yeah.
And he doesn't knock, and then the knock comes out of there. So he does it again, and then 2 more come out of there.
You froze
It
again.
starts like a regular beat, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a woodpecker. Well, he starts knocking back, and then this beat gets even faster and faster. And all of a sudden, you hear 2 more off in the distance, like really loud knocks.
Yeah.
What the heck was that? And then you heard a whoop. And so he's standing there, and then he catches a glimpse of something. He goes, "Oh crap!" I'm like, "What?" And he says, "There's a brown baby down there." I'm like, "What?" He said, "No, there's a baby Bigfoot down there." I'm like, "Okay." And then just as he says that, I look up, and maybe 100 yards away, and see something huge, and it was, I don't want to say jet black, but black that, and the sun glistened off it.
Mm-hmm.
get behind a tree, and then he starts, trying to snap pictures. And I'm looking down and, where the baby's supposed to be. And then I turn around, and when I go to take a picture, the one you could just see his face he was not happy. And he was 8 foot, but he had to be 800 pounds. He was even more massive than the one I saw in 87.
Yeah.
So now there's at least two. And I'm thinking we're between the babies and the parents or other clan. I mean, when we walked in, we got X's on both sides of us.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if we were in an alleyway or almost like a big living room we shouldn't have been in. And
Probably
they got closer.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy.
Oh, no, you're fine. But then he started took a film, and they were within 50 yards. And they closed that 100 yard to 50 yard gap without barely a sound and in just seconds. And when he was taking a film, you can see it's another one of those, typical Bigfoot films where you're kind of assuming what's there, but you can see
Mm-hmm.
the rocking motion of the head, trying to go with the wind, with the tree. And then all of a sudden the wind shifted and the tree moves and you can see the eye and the eye blink. And he looked at me, and he's had a lot more experiences than I have. He's got some stuff back with the BFRO back in the late 90s out in Washington State and stuff. And after he heard a couple more grunts and growls, he goes, "We're in trouble." I says, "What do you mean?" And
You froze. Hello, Brian.
hello, sorry. I don't know what's going on. This is the first time that's happened. But
You're
I'll try not.
talking Bigfoot. That's what's going on.
Oh, yeah, but he looked at me, and I'll use a little French here,
Yep.
but
Wait a minute. Let me say something here.
yeah,
Now he's done all this activity. He did the howls, knocks, all this, and yet he has the gall to say, "Oh, we are in trouble."
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
I'm
ahead.
guilty by I'm guilty by association at that point, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
You know? So yeah, he's like, we better get a move on it. We're gonna get our asses kicked. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And that was the vibe that you felt though. As they got closer, they got within 40 yards, and then that's where they stayed. We're walking out, and I have never, what little short time I've been doing this, but I actually
Mm-hmm.
pulled up my GPS, took a picture of the coordinates, and sent it to Elaine. If you don't hear from me every 30 minutes, call,
Right,
because you just had that vibe that it was like, you better leave now. We're not giving you a choice.
right.
So then the crazy part was we get back to the vehicles. First thing he wants to do is call Val to tell Val everything that was going on. Well, next thing you know, while he's on the phone, you start hearing tree, breaks and grunts, and they're within 30, 40 yards right on the tree line. They're running. You can see them going back and forth. There were two black ones and a smaller brown one.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, they're not going to leave until we leave. They're going to make sure we're gone. And this goes on for another 20 minutes while he's on the phone. And I I had turned off my recorder at that point, because when we got back to the vehicles, I thought we were done. I thought we're going home. So
Right,
I put that in my backpack and threw it in my trunk. And as soon as they started up, he's got it on his recorder, because for the first time we got a couple whistles. And you know better. Somebody told me that if you hear the whistle, that's probably a bad thing.
Well, not always. It depends on the situation. Usually, if they start whistling, they're signaling each other to try to force you out most of the time. But sometimes they'll whistle each other in the woods to signify that they see something.
Got you. So yeah, that was and so he's got another 20 minutes on his recorder, and that was when we had looked for any sign on the way in, and on the way out, uh, I sent you the picture. It was I don't know, 3 or 4 inch diameter stick that magically appeared, completely horizontal in the trees.
Oh yeah, I remember that picture. Yes.
It was not there when we went in. So yeah, they hung it up there for us to see when we left.
Now,
I don't know if that was a kind of this is how big I am. We know how big you are. You're going to be next.
yeah, that could have been it. Yes. Now, the
So
area that you were in, do you think that possibly that was a nursery?
I think so because I sent that picture and it was a perfect triangle, but one end was open, but the other two ends, the logs were interlaced.
Right.
So, but one end was open, so we don't know. I sent it to a couple people, and one who says she has a clan in her yard or on her property says that's like a big playpen for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we got in the nursery and got in between the playpen and mom and dad, and they called in the whole family.
Yeah, when you interfere with their children, they do. The whole clan will show up.
Yeah, that was intense, and for it to be in broad daylight and happen like that was. I had to like part of me wants to go back, but at the same time, he told me it's probably not a good idea. So
No, that's not a good idea to go back in there.
probably not going to go. I'll go back to the other spot where they're a little.
Right. So I still can't get over. He said, "We are in trouble. You're the one that did all this, not me. I didn't do it, and you're the one. We're in trouble."
Yeah,
That's what gets me.
I hate doing the howls, and as soon as he started off with one of the, gosh dang it,
Well, I do house, and but here's the thing that I found out. I can do the Ohio howl. It may not be as loud as the Ohio howl is, but I can do the duration. The problem with the Ohio howl, it's a semi-aggressive howl. It's a challenging howl to other males, and it's challenge to the alpha, to the big male. And you're saying you're the baddest thing around, and they tend to get a little bit upset over that howl.
yeah, yeah,
So,
that small log in the back of my truck convinced me not to do it. So
yeah, that definitely would tell me not to do it anymore either. So, is there anything else that you would like to express to the viewers? You know, I know
uh,
you call yourself a Bigfoot enthusiast, but you're an actual researcher. You've been out looking and you've found prints and you've had experiences with them and everything else. And uh, is there anything that you would like to tell anybody out there? You know what they need to do in becoming more of an enthusiast, such as yourself, or do you want to warn them about something?
sorry, I missed about half of that.
Okay,
Sorry.
it's not your fault. I know it's every time I do a live, no matter who it is, sometime or another it freezes up for a little bit, and it's not your fault. I was asking, is there anything you would like to tell the viewers um, out of all your experiences? that something they should try to where they can actually get a sighting if they want a sighting, or should they try to get a sighting? Something that you may find what you did that they should or should not try.
Don't feed them. Don't bait them. I mean, yeah, you could get something like that, but there's consequences for it.
Yeah,
Um,
and
to
it's
see
not
them,
always you, right? Sorry, Brian. It froze up, bud.
oh, sorry. Yeah, to see them, I'm just a novice at this still. Listen to people with the experiences and, um, first thing after that first experience was go out into the woods and just sit and listen. What's
Hmm.
actually out there, and then try to figure out what's different. If like I have the luxury where I go because it's right off Lake Michigan, so the wind tends to blow one way.
Right.
So if the trees are all blown down one way, but you get one or two that are blown down the opposite way, it's like what happened and why,
Mhm.
or like the X's and or the one time I found it was a cherry tree that had been pulled out by the roots, carried up a hill, and then stuck in the ground upside down, and there wasn't a cherry tree anywhere. It was the first maybe half mile since I'd seen a cherry tree. So it's like looking for the things that are different. Um, yeah, and just sit, just sit and listen. Pay attention to what's going on around you, because for something 8 foot tall and you know 500 to 1,000 pounds, they do get around quiet.
Yes, very much so.
I've gotten more pictures doing like selfie style
Hmm.
than I get looking forward. You know, I caught a. I've got one of a 7, but I had one where I knew I was being followed, could hear the occasional, extra step when I'd stop walking, and took a selfie. And sure enough, when I blew the selfie up, you could see one standing side profile with his shoulders and half body turned. So trying to look narrower as he could, but
Yeah,
like, yeah, I knew you were there. And stay calm, don't run. You went out there for a reason. That's the thing I got to remember.
yeah. So
Don't panic.
tell me something, Brian. Have you ever, when you've been walked out, you do you have to do you find that you have to force yourself to walk out, or is it just something that you just comes natural? You don't feel the need to run.
Comes natural. I'm
Okay.
53 and 290. I don't run well even if I wanted to. So,
Well,
you know,
yeah, me too.
I'm not gonna, and I'm not gonna outrun them. And with just the stuff I've had happen, if they really wanted to get me, it would have happened and I'd never known it. So I just take the hints and okay, time to go and walk out. I think if you take off, you could be in trouble.
Yes. Now I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
The ones that you've seen, the ones that you've actually looked at their faces, what are all the five types that you probably heard the five descriptions I've given for Bigfoot. What are
Yeah,
the ones you've seen look mainly like?
more like your
Human?
more like your patty type.
Okay.
The you know the deep set eyes, the big brow
Hmm.
ridge, the kind of mush. I almost want to say like an upside down gorilla nose. because the gorilla noses, the nostrils go way up, and this is mushed down. You know, luckily I haven't seen teeth or anything yet, but they got the hair on the cheeks. You know, they're not completely hairless on the face.
Okay.
So darker skin, almost like a black mat, I guess would be the color.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh,
So you were at the skin when you froze up, my friend.
yeah, it was almost like I've only seen like two faces,
Mm-hmm.
and they were quick, but like a black mat. You know, it didn't glisten or anything, just like black leather almost.
Right. Right.
So it wasn't like, you know, even my old skin looks fairly smooth like a baby's bottom compared to theirs.
Okay. I got a hypothetical question for you. And this is a good question because in the Upper Peninsula here lately, I've been getting a couple reports that are about a certain type of Bigfoot that's got fangs sticking outside their lip.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the gorilla, poof to their mouth area. And you probably know the type I'm talking about.
Dugway, right?
Yes, sir. What would you do if you ran into the Gugway?
Hope for the best.
Well, you got to be a little bit more proactive than that, Brian.
I mean, I guess it depends on his mood that day. What's going to happen? He's got control at that point. You know,
Well,
I should probably I would try not to run. I'm trying to take in what you know. I've been watching your channel and listening to
mhm,
you. You know, and actually try to man up and make him think I'm a little tougher than I look. You know, and then if that doesn't work, then backpedal.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah. You started to freeze up and then you didn't.
oh, yeah. So not run, stand there. I guess kind of see what's going to happen. Kind of like I try not to run when I have mine. It's
Hmm.
it's a lot easier not to do when I don't have somebody with me.
Right. Right.
I got somebody with me, then it's like, okay, you know, I would hang around a little longer. Like, you know, there's been nights where I would sit out at my truck and have stuff going on all around me, and I would just sit by the bumper of my truck and record, even though I got tree breaks and footsteps and stuff
Hmm.
happening. It's like I had my back to my truck and just sitting there and enjoy taking it in, the interaction, and they weren't chucking rocks or grunting at me, so I didn't figure they minded. But if I had somebody else with me, then that's another story. You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
somebody's life in my hand.
But so, oh, we froze again.
Ah,
But so, is there anything? We've been here for about an hour and 5 minutes now. If you want to go longer, we'll go longer. I mean,
doesn't matter to me. Whatever you like.
so
I'll talk, take questions, whatever you want to do. What should I do if I see a Gugway?
well, basically, what I do if I saw a Gugway, it depends on two things. One, if it's standing there staring at me, now I'm going to have to fight. And that means I'm going to pull every weapon I've got. Um, I'm not going to hesitate. I will shoot, you know, because I go out carrying. I've normally got my wife with me. She's 5 foot tall. Uh, her safety is my paramount. Is paramount to me, and I'll send her away, and I'll stand and fight, and that's what'll happen. If it hasn't seen me, I'll back out quietly and slowly, and get her and me out of there. Brian, you there? Let's give him a little bit. Brian, looks like we lost him. Let's give him a little bit, see if he can make it back. Um, but yeah, when it comes to one of these man eating, flesh eating Bigfoot, you definitely want to do everything you can. We got him back, so let's bring him back on.
Sorry about that.
Hey, it happens, buddy. I told you every time you start talking about Bigfoot, your
There we
internet
go.
does some of the weirdest stuff. I mean, it ain't just you; it's everybody. But yeah, those are the things. Did you hear what I said about the Bigfoot? I mean, if it's a good way, if it's seen me, I'm fighting. If it hasn't seen me, I'm gonna try to get her out of there and get out of there quietly and safely. Anything else? I mean, it's up to you. You think you're man up to stand up against a creature that can sling you in about 4 different directions at one time? More
Yeah.
power to you. So
No, I don't. Ever since I saw that one in '87,
yeah,
even though I am currently 6 foot and 290, I know I am not big in nature. There has
yeah,
never been that arrogance at all. Ever since even guys I work at a gym, I see some big men, but
right,
you put them next to a Bigfoot and they're like, 3-year-olds.
yeah, yeah,
So I have never had that arrogance to think I'm going to take on something like that.
yeah. So let me ask you this question: when you go out, do you carry a firearm with you, or do you not carry one, or do you find that when they see the firearm on your hip, or that they don't interact as much?
Yeah. I don't carry just because, and it might have been coincidence, but the 2 times that I did carry, I had a 45 on my hip
Hmm.
because that's what I normally carry, and nothing.
Nothing.
Within 5 minutes of me getting out with that on my hip, I started hearing birds and squirrels, and
Hmm.
where normally you get out and you don't hear anything. You don't hear the birds, squirrels, or chipmunks or anybody running around. But within 5 minutes of getting out with that on my hip, everything would go silent or gets noisy.
Yeah,
So out there, no, I don't carry, but other places I definitely will start. Especially after this last little episode, because there are some other areas I want to explore. Uh, I'm in talks with the guy who bought that property out where my grandma
hmm,
lived, and I did get to walk it one time, and same thing is still going on. You
hmm,
can walk and everything is fine until you get down the path. As soon as you make it, and I asked him point blank because his house is just farther down the trail. I said, "Is it always like this?" And he says, "Is your hair standing up?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh yeah, been like that ever since we moved here."
hmm.
So
So tell me some places that you like. Are you wanting to go to a place like the LBL to look around, or are you wanting to do something more local to you?
There are other places I would love to go,
Hmm.
but with my girlfriend the way she is, that stuff's just
Hmm.
gonna have to wait.
Right.
You know? I don't even do overnight trips right now. If I go out I might go out at 7, but I'm home by 11 or 12.
Right.
Because she only has the use of her right arm,
Uh huh.
so or left arm, and I don't feel right leaving her alone, even though she says she'll be fine and she's a rock and everything.
Hmm.
In my heart as a man, I don't want to leave my better half wanting for anything. So
Right.
now, other places I would love to hit. I'd love to hit the UP. With things. It's funny you were talking about that. I just watched a video about and I knew every spot they were talking about. It was like
Hmm.
it was a 15-foot Bigfoot versus two dogmen, and it was like, okay, I know where that's at. I know I've been there. I've been
Yeah.
here. So
Well, you keep the dog men up there. I don't want them down here. Okay.
no, I want nothing to do with them dogmen. My mom had an experience when she was little with one,
Yeah.
and well, the family did. That's the weird thing was because they lived in Nuevo at the time. I'll put that out there, and it was in 1964, and they were all sitting in the house, and they had a house that was
Hmm.
right at the edge of Manistee National Forest, which
Uh
is
huh.
big for the dogman. And this was 64, and they're all sitting around. It's kind of a foggy night and doing whatever they do back then. And all of a sudden, they hear their German Shepherd outside, who's chained to the doghouse, start barking, and then a yipe. And then a few minutes later, the dog came through the window with the chain wrapped around its neck. So we're talking a German Shepherd gets whipped,
Yikes.
tossed through their window. And my grandpa was in World War II, got his leg shot off by a tank, Purple Heart. First thing he did was they moved the bookcase in front of the window. And
Hmm.
while they were moving that bookcase, the door started being banged on and the handle trying to be opened. And so he had four sons, three of them were old enough to use guns. So he gave each of them a shotgun because he wasn't going to be intimidated by whoever was out there.
Right.
So he goes outside and it's pretty foggy. They can't see much. So he wasn't going to get ambushed. So what he did was he got a ladder and he took the boys up on the roof with a whole bunch of those, big battery box flashlights.
Right.
And they could hear something walking around the house, grunting and growling, but couldn't see anything. And then finally, after about an hour up there hearing this, Grandpa sees it in the flashlight, and it looked just like a big black wolf standing on two legs as it was walking through the around. So they sat up there waiting to get a shot at this thing because they were going to take it out. And that was the only time they actually got a physical sighting was in that flashlight. And
Hmm.
they were worried about just shooting off into the night because you never know what you're going to hit, or as hit a house or
Yeah.
something down the road, or who knows where that bullet's going to go. So when it finally left about an hour before dawn. So they spent the whole night, him and three boys, up on the roof with shotguns. That was in 64. Then they moved to Lake Ann in 65. And in 67 is when all the Bigfoot stuff started.
Hmm.
So they actually had one night, and this was I put a FOIA in because I want to know more about all the activity that's been reported in this
Hmm.
area. And I use pretty broad terms, so I got to go back in and because I use like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, unknown tracks, and
Hmm.
unknown figures, blah blah blah. And they've got 153 reports at the sheriff's department. So I got to go
That's a
in, and they're
lot.
going to let me read through it and see what is and what isn't what I want.
Right.
But I know one of them is from Grandma and Grandpa, and he was a dispatcher at the time for the county sheriff's department.
Uh huh.
and she was at home. It was just after midnight, and all of a sudden, where they lived, there were bears that would sleep in the barn at times, and the dog they had, the dog would chase bears out of the barn. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
dog come running in the house and jumped under the bed and was crying like crazy. And then it was just a little bit of a light rain, but thunder and lightning.
Mm-hmm.
And lightning goes off, and my grandma sees in her bedroom window this massive shadow that takes up 99% of the window.
Ooh.
So she calls my grandpa, tells him what's going on. She grabs her shotgun and is sitting in her bed waiting for him to get there. Well, he brings the whole cavalry. He brings other deputies and everything with him. And uh, finally, about light, they searched around the house, didn't find anything right away. And then when light broke, they found 17-inch tracks outside the window and then going off into the woods. And they cast those tracks. My uncle's got them now. And they said whatever made those tracks was well in excess of 500 pounds.
He froze again. Well,
You
Brian
were there?
Rose, yeah, we're there.
Oh,
You stopped at it's well in excess of 500 pounds is where it stopped.
yep. So um, that was one of the things they had happen out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and then I think it was like 4 years later, about 2 miles up the road. But that's one of the reports, is what my whole point was to
Mm-hmm.
tell it that was, because they had the newspapers out there, they had DNR, they had Benzie County Sheriff's Department. And then a couple miles up the road, my aunt and uncle had their chickens started disappearing. So they get a big dog to, catch whatever's stealing the chickens.
Right.
And they hear the big dog start barking and they hear this huge crash. And they go out and they found 17-inch tracks that went into the chicken coop. And then apparently when the dog started barking and chasing, it blew through the wooden side of the chicken coop on the way out. So they had tracks all the way in the woods through the freaking chicken coop that looked like a bomb went off and took the whole wall out.
Wow.
And they had the state police out there for that one. They had the DNR, local sheriffs and papers. So that's a real hot spot I want to get back out to, because there's
Right.
a small airport, and on the backside of it, I think it's 500 acres of state land. It's either 500,000. I can't remember which. Somebody threw numbers at me.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a friend whose mom moved in, and she's talking about hearing all these whoops and screaming from like midnight till 2 a.m. from behind the airport. And
Wow.
she thinks it's a bunch of kids out back there partying.
No, ain't no kid.
I didn't have the heart to tell her that, because that would freak her right out. So I want to get out there really bad at night.
Well, so if for some reason I can get to Michigan and get a hold of you, you can come pick me up, and if you can, come pick me up at a truck stop, and we'll take off and go and see what we can find together. You
Oh,
wouldn't
I'd be
mind that,
all
would
over it. I would make that work somehow. I don't care who I'd have to, if I got to pay the grocery store clerk to come and sit with her. that would be an honor.
It would be my pleasure. Trust me. It'd be a it would make my year to come out and do a little bit of investigating with you.
I would love it. Just a
Um,
chance to pick your brain and see things through your eyes. And
well, I'd love to. As soon as I can get a load to to the lower part of Michigan, I'll give you a shout and let you know it well ahead of time. And I'll let you know, and we'll get hooked up, and we'll sit down and have dinner together, and sit back and talk, and I'll pick your brain, and you can pick mine all you want.
Make an old man cry here.
No need to do that, my friend. It's just two old guys together sitting around talking about Bigfoot. That's all it's going to be. I mean, I consider you a friend and a confidant, and you know, and I respect what you do, and I applaud you for having the guts to go out and be in an area where these creatures are at and observe them. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people want to sit behind a computer and think they know something, and you're one of the few that gets out and actually does it. And I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. I've always been a hands-on learner. I've never been one who can read something and put it together. I've always had to, even when it comes to cars, I can't read and put a carburetor together. I had to take it apart myself. And
yeah.
So if I want to learn about Bigfoot, yeah, you can read all you want, but half of that goes out the window when you're actually out there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, I've enjoyed this evening, and like I said, I applaud you for what you do. You get out there when you can, and you go to areas. You're not afraid to go in by yourself. I've had to do that many times, and it takes a special person to be able to do that by themselves. And that's no joke. I mean, you gotta have a backbone to do it, because some of the things they do can cause a lesser man to have a heart attack.
Yeah, that roar was put the fear of God in me. That was for sure.
Yeah. But my friend, if you want to hang out in the back room for a little bit, and we will. I'm going to end my show here.
Okay. Absolutely.
And we'll talk a little bit, and maybe we can get together before long. Okay.
Sounds good to me. I'll be right here.
That's a wonderful thing to do, to get with a friend like you, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and I applaud you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
All righty. I'll be right with you, buddy.
All right.
Everybody, that'll conclude tonight's show. As you can see, Brian is he's a true investigator. He goes out and looks at these things, looks at these creatures, and figures out things hands on. And he's got a strong will, and I applaud you all for. I applaud him for doing what he does. You have to have an inner fortitude like that to go out in the woods with these creatures. And I thank you all for coming. And hearing all that he's told me tonight, I'm kind of flustered and kind of in awe of a man he's done his job. I mean, he's done something that a lot of people can't do. He's been in close proximity to these creatures, and you you just don't understand how tough that is sometimes. So thank you all for coming, and may God bless each and every one of you and watch over you every day of your lives. And this is the old bear signing off. We'll see you again next Friday. We got Les Odell and a special guest that I do believe that you, the viewers, will enjoy supremely. We thank you again. Bye bye.